Before I tell you what happened, I want you to imagine this. You find the daughter you raised, sleeping in her car, pregnant and terrified of you. Now ask yourself, what would you do if the child you loved looked at you like a stranger? My name is Margaret, and this is the story of how I found my adopted daughter living in her car and uncovered a truth that almost destroyed our family. If you love stories that remind us it's never too late to seek the truth, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more real-life tales that touch the heart. Now let's begin. I found my adopted daughter living out of her car, 19 years old, pregnant, and curled up beneath a heap of old coats in an abandoned lot. When she noticed me through the fogged window, I expected relief. What I saw instead was raw, paralyzing fear. Her scream shattered the quiet air. She told me to leave, to go away, that I was never her real mother anyway. Those same words had reached me 3 days earlier through my other daughter, Rebecca. The same call that had shattered me, the one accusing Lily of stealing from our family company and disappearing with the money. But as I stood there in that cold parking lot, watching my girl tremble through tears, something didn't make sense. If she had stolen from us, why was she living in a rusted car? Why did she look terrified instead of guilty? Someone was lying. I just didn't know who. 3 days before that moment, I'd been on the terrace of my small villa in Tuscany, sipping coffee and letting the Italian sun warm my shoulders. That's when my phone rang. Rebecca's name lit up the screen. Her voice was trembling when I answered. "Mom," she said, "it's Lily. She's been stealing from the company." The word stealing hit like a physical blow. I set my cup down, staring at the olive trees beyond the railing. Rebecca went on, her tone sharp and wounded. "Daniel found proof. Bank transfers, forged invoices. It's been going on for months. We confronted her, and she left a note saying we were never her real family anyway." 19 years old, the same girl I had raised since she was 10, my best friend, Grace's daughter. Grace had made me promise to care for her when cancer took her life. I could still see that hospital room, the smell of disinfectant mixing with fading flowers. Grace had gripped my hand with the strength of a dying wish. "She doesn't have anyone else, Maggie. Please raise her as your own." I'd looked over at Lily then, a small, quiet child standing by the door, backpack still on her shoulders, her face frozen in confusion. I promised I would, and I did. For 9 years, she grew up in our home. She called me Mom. She was careful, thoughtful, never the kind to lie or take what wasn't hers. She joined our textile business right after school, learning from the ground up, always eager to help. And now Rebecca was telling me that same girl had betrayed us. It didn't fit. It couldn't fit. Still, Rebecca's story was detailed. My son-in-law Daniel, our CFO, had handled the discovery. He'd shown the leadership board the evidence, pushed for her immediate firing, and claimed she'd already vanished. Rebecca said she'd cleaned out her apartment. No trace left. I remember staring at the hills beyond the terrace, trying to breathe. Everything looked exactly the same, but the world had shifted beneath me. Never her real family. Those words didn't belong to Lily. They belonged to fear, to manipulation. Grace's face came back to me, gray and frail but certain. She'd trusted me to protect that girl. I wasn't going to break that promise now. I walked inside and opened my laptop. My fingers shook as I typed an email to an old contact, a private investigator I hadn't used in years. Find Lily Turner. Do not tell Rebecca or Daniel I asked. When I hit send, I opened another tab and booked the earliest flight home. I'd left the business in their hands after Edward died, telling myself they were capable, that I could finally rest. But now my instincts were screaming. Something was wrong. By dawn, the next morning, my suitcase was packed. I tucked an old photo into the side pocket, Edward, Grace, and a 10-year-old Lily between us, smiling that hesitant smile of someone still learning she's allowed to belong. That smile had meant everything. And if she was lost, if someone had pushed her to this edge, I was going to find her, no matter what it took. The flight home felt longer than it should have. I barely slept, my thoughts spinning between disbelief and guilt. When the plane touched down, I turned my phone back on. A message popped up instantly from the investigator. Found her. Sending location now. The map pin landed in an industrial zone near the airport, the kind of place where the city forgot to breathe. Vacant warehouses, cracked pavement, chain-link fences. Not the place anyone should be living, especially not a girl like Lily. I rented a car and drove there myself. The farther I went, the emptier the streets became. Old for lease signs leaned in the wind. A few crows perched on telephone poles, the only witnesses left. When I finally turned the corner, I saw it. A faded blue sedan parked beneath a dead tree, one window covered with a trash bag. My chest tightened. I slowed to a stop and just sat there staring. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I didn't know what version of her I'd find. The angry thief from Rebecca's story? Or the little girl who used to draw sunflowers on her homework? I stepped out of the car, the air heavy with oil and damp concrete. My shoes crunched on gravel as I approached. Inside the car, something shifted. A movement beneath a pile of old clothes. Then her face appeared through the glass. Lily. Her cheeks were hollow, her eyes rimmed red from crying. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, and beneath the oversized sweatshirt she wore, I could see the soft roundness of her stomach. Pregnant. For a second, her expression softened. She recognized me. Then everything in her face collapsed into panic. She scrambled away, pressing herself against the opposite door. I tapped gently on the window. "Lily, sweetheart, it's me." Her voice came out muffled through the glass. "No, go away, please, just leave. I only want to talk." "I don't want to talk to you," she shouted. "Just go." Tears streaked down her face. She looked terrified. Not angry, not guilty. Terrified. "I'm not leaving," I said softly. "Not until you tell me what's really going on." Her hands pressed against the window as if she could push me away through the glass. "You don't understand," she sobbed. "You can't be here." "Then help me understand." She shook her head, trembling. "I can't," she whispered. "Just, please go." I tried the door handle. Locked. "Lily, you were never my real family anyway." The words came out like something she'd been forced to say, jagged, practiced. I stood there, frozen, my heart breaking. "Is that what you want me to believe?" I asked quietly. She turned her face away. "I don't care what you believe." I stepped back slowly. Her shoulders were shaking as she cried into her hands. Through the fogged glass, she was just a shape. Small, scared, alone. "I'm not giving up on you," I said, my voice trembling. She didn't answer. I walked back to my car and sat there, gripping the steering wheel with shaking hands. She was 19, pregnant, and living in a car. Yet she'd screamed the same words Rebecca had quoted to me. Word for word. Something was very, very wrong. If Lily had truly stolen money, she wouldn't be hiding in an abandoned parking lot. Thieves don't sleep in cars. They run with the money, they vanish, they start new lives. But she hadn't run. She was trapped, terrified. As I drove away, the image of her face stayed with me, that flash of relief when she first saw me, before fear swallowed it whole. That wasn't guilt. That was desperation. Rebecca's story had sounded too perfect, too neat. Now it felt rehearsed. And Daniel, always calm, always controlled, had been the one to find the evidence. By the time I reached my hotel, my doubt had hardened into resolve. Someone was lying, and I had a feeling I already knew who. I checked into a small, nameless place downtown. Cash only, no questions asked. The kind of place you hide in when you don't want to be found. And as I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at that photograph of Lily between Grace and Edward, I whispered to the still air, "I'm coming, sweetheart. Whatever this is, I'll uncover it. I promise." By the time I reached the old family estate, dawn had barely begun to color the sky. The long driveway looked the same, lined with oak trees that had outlived generations of us. But something about it felt foreign, colder. The iron gates were open when I arrived. I parked near the fountain and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, breathing in that familiar scent of pine and wet soil. It didn't feel like home anymore. The front door opened before I even stepped out. Rebecca stood there in jeans and a sweater, her hair tied up in that efficient way she'd learned from me. But her eyes were different, tired, cautious, and a little too eager to look innocent. "Mom," she said, rushing forward to hug me. Her voice was soft, but her arms felt stiff. Behind her, Daniel appeared in the doorway, composed as always. Gray at the temples now, polished, professional. "Margaret," he said warmly, "we didn't expect you so soon." "I took the first flight," I replied, pulling away from Rebecca's embrace. Daniel's grip was firm when we shook hands, the kind of grip meant to project confidence. I used to find it reassuring. Now it just felt practiced. Inside, the house looked untouched. Same furniture, same smell of lemon polish and old wood. Even the grandfather clock in the corner still ticked with its slow, faithful rhythm. But under all that familiarity, something was wrong. Rebecca guided me into the kitchen. "Let me make you tea, Mom." "You must be exhausted. Coffee," I said quietly, taking a seat at the old oak table. That table had seen birthdays, arguments, late-night business plans, and now, lies. As she boiled the water, Daniel excused himself. "A quick call with the accountants," he said. "We've had to handle a few issues since Lily left." When he disappeared down the hall, the silence stretched. Rebecca placed a steaming cup in front of me. "You look pale." "You shouldn't have traveled in such a hurry." "I needed to understand what happened," I said. "I needed to see for myself." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I know this is hard, Mom." I was shocked too, but the evidence is undeniable. She took advantage of us. Of you, I studied her face. There was a flicker of something there. Guilt, maybe, or doubt. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "She left a note?" I asked. Rebecca nodded. "Said she was never really one of us." The same words Lily had screamed, word for word. "That doesn't sound like her," I murmured. Rebecca's jaw tightened. "You always believed the best in her. You didn't see how manipulative she could be." I didn't argue. Not yet. I sipped my coffee, pretending to agree, pretending to be the heartbroken mother who still trusted her surviving daughter. But inside, I was studying every detail, every glance, every pause. Daniel's voice carried faintly from the other room, calm, professional, confident. The sound of a man who never lost control. And that terrified me more than anything. That night, I unpacked in the guest room, my own house, yet I felt like a visitor. Rebecca and Daniel had moved into the master bedroom after I left for Italy. It made sense, but standing there, I felt like an outsider in the life I'd built. On the nightstand sat a photograph, Edward smiling with his arm around me, Grace laughing, and Lily, 10 years old, her careful smile half hidden by her hair. I sat on the bed and stared at that picture until the house went quiet. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lily's face through that car window. Pale, trembling, desperate. The next morning, Rebecca made breakfast. The eggs were overcooked, the coffee too weak, but I didn't care. Daniel was already gone. "Early meeting," she said. We sat in silence for a while. "She's always been ungrateful," Rebecca said suddenly. "I know that's hard to hear, but it's true. She never appreciated what she had." I nodded, pretending to listen. Inside, a fire was building, because the girl she was describing, cold, careless, ungrateful, wasn't the Lily I knew, and I was done pretending I believed her. Later that afternoon, I took a quiet walk through the house. When I reached the end of the hallway, I stopped at a door I hadn't opened in years. Lily's room. The doorknob was cold under my hand. When I pushed it open, I froze. The bed was made, her books still on the desk, a sweater draped over the chair. It didn't look like someone who'd run away. It looked like someone who'd been erased. And that's when I knew. This wasn't a disappearance. This was something else. The scent in Lily's room stopped me. Faint lavender, the kind that clings to fabric long after someone's gone. Everything was neat, precise. The bed made, the books lined up, a small sweater hanging over the chair as if she might walk in at any moment and put it on. This wasn't the room of a thief. It was the room of someone who'd been taken by surprise. I ran my hand across her desk. The surface was dusty except for one square, where a notebook must have sat. I opened the drawers, one by one, pens, old receipts, neatly stacked college textbooks, corporate finance, accounting principles, business management. She had been learning the same trade that built this family, preparing for a future here. In the bottom drawer, something caught my eye, a thin blue book wedged between folders. I pulled it out. Learn to Draw, a beginner's guide. But inside weren't lessons. They were sketches. Pencil drawings, delicate and detailed, a baby's crib, tiny shoes, a mobile with stars, page after page of dreams on paper. I sank onto the floor, the sketchbook open on my knees. These weren't the drawings of a thief. They were the drawings of a mother preparing for a child. I closed the book carefully, my throat tight. Whoever painted Lily as a criminal wanted her gone, afraid, ashamed, silenced, and I had a sick feeling I knew exactly who had written that story. That night, when the house was quiet, I sat in my room and unlocked my phone. I scrolled through old contacts until I found one name, Victor Ashford. He was a forensic accountant Edward and I had used years ago during a supplier dispute. If anyone could see through numbers to the truth, it was him. I sent a message. Need your help, quietly. Possible fraud in company accounts. Send your findings only to me. He replied within minutes. Understood. Send credentials. I gave him everything I still had. My old access codes, internal files, backups, Rebecca and Daniel didn't know existed. When I set the phone down, my reflection in the mirror startled me. I looked like my mother used to when she'd had enough of being lied to. Calm, cold, determined. For the next few days, I pretended life was normal. Breakfast with Rebecca, polite conversations about suppliers and fabric shipments, evening dinners with Daniel, his tone steady, reassuring, just as it had been when he used to tell Edward, "Don't worry, sir. The numbers are under control." Now I saw how dangerous that control really was. On the fourth day, my phone buzzed, an email from Victor. No subject line, just an attachment. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. Systematic embezzlement. Over 24 months. Nearly $800,000 missing. Funds rerouted through shell companies and offshore accounts. Transactions pointing to a Rebecca Cole, a junior executive in our accounting department. And at the bottom, primary beneficiary, Daniel Cole. Property in Costa Rica purchased under alias. One-way tickets booked for December 15th. Daniel and Rebecca Cole. The final note froze me. Fabricated evidence framing Lily Turner for theft of $42,000. Documents created on Daniel Cole's office computer. My hands trembled so hard I almost dropped the phone. Daniel had done it all. The theft, the lies, the manipulation. He had turned my daughters against each other. He had made Rebecca believe the sister she resented was a criminal. I took a deep breath and called the private investigator again. "I need everything you can find on a woman named Rebecca Cole," I said. "She works at our mill, and she's connected to Daniel." He hesitated. "Do you suspect an affair?" "I suspect everything," I said flatly. He agreed to start immediately. The next 3 days were unbearable. I smiled through meals, nodded during small talk, pretending to be the frail old mother still recovering from heartbreak. But inside, I was counting the hours. When the investigator finally called, I stepped into the garden to answer. His voice was steady. "You were right. Rebecca Cole, 28. She's been involved with Daniel for over a year and a half. I've got hotel receipts, phone records, even photos. Send them to me," I said. An hour later, the pictures appeared on my screen. Daniel and the young woman at a restaurant, at a hotel, holding hands, kissing in a parking lot. The betrayal was complete. He had stolen our money, our trust, and nearly destroyed the girl I'd promised to protect. That night, I printed everything, the reports, the photographs, the plane tickets, and placed them in a folder. Then I waited. Rebecca came home from the office around 6. Her heels clicked down the hallway, her purse slung over one shoulder. "Mom, you're home early." "Yes," I said. "We need to talk." She looked at me, confused. Then I handed her the folder. "What's this?" "Proof." She opened it, and her world fell apart. Rebecca froze when she saw the first photo. Daniel, hand on a young woman's back, both stepping out of a hotel. Her breath hitched. She flipped to the next picture, then the next. Her face turned pale, her hand trembling against the glossy paper. "Oh my God," she whispered. That's Rebecca from accounting." "Yes," I said quietly. She dropped onto the edge of the bed, her knees buckling. "How long?" "At least 18 months. Rebecca stared blankly at the wall for a long time. When she finally looked down again, she caught sight of the next page, the financial report. Her eyes scanned the lines of numbers, the accounts, the fake invoices, the Cayman Islands transfers. $800,000, she whispered. He stole it all. "And he made sure Lily took the blame," I said softly. She kept reading until she reached the last page, the fabricated documents traced to Daniel's office computer. When she looked up at me, her face was streaked with tears. "He framed her," she said, her voice breaking. "Lily didn't take anything." "No, she didn't." Rebecca pressed both hands to her face and sobbed, a sound that came from somewhere deep, a sound of guilt, betrayal, and grief all tangled together. I sat beside her and put a hand on her shoulder. "I believed him," she whispered. "He told me she was stealing, and I believed every word. I even said terrible things about her. I told you she was ungrateful. He's very good at lying," I said gently, "and you were hurt." "That's what he preyed on. But I wanted to believe it," she said, lifting her head. "I wanted her to be guilty because it meant I was right. Because all those years I was jealous of her and angry that you loved her so easily. And when he told me she betrayed us, it felt like justice." Tears filled my eyes. "You didn't know." "I should have," she whispered. "He was going to leave me, wasn't he?" I nodded. "He bought property overseas. One-way tickets. He was planning to disappear with her." Rebecca closed the folder and stared at it like it was something poisonous. "Where is Lily?" "Still living in her car," I said, "but we're going to fix that." She looked up, eyes red but fierce. "Take me to her." We drove across town without saying much. When we reached the empty lot, Lily's car was there under the same leafless tree. She was awake this time, sitting in the driver's seat, a book open on her lap. When she saw me step out of the car, her body tensed. Then she noticed Rebecca behind me, and her whole face crumbled into panic. Rebecca walked forward slowly, hands shaking. She knocked gently on the window. "Lily," she said softly, "please. I know you're scared, but I need you to hear me." Lily didn't move. Rebecca's voice cracked. "I said terrible things to you. I believed lies about you. I treated you like you didn't belong because I was jealous. I'm so sorry." She swallowed hard. "Daniel framed you. He took everything. But we know the truth now. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then quietly, the lock clicked. Lily opened the door. Her eyes were swollen, her face streaked with tears. She stepped out slowly, her hands trembling. Rebecca reached for her, and Lily collapsed into her arms. They both cried. I stood back, watching as the two girls I'd raised finally clung to each other. Not as rivals, but as sisters. When they calmed, Lily looked at me. "He said if I told anyone, he'd have me arrested," she whispered, "that they'd take my baby away." "Not anymore," I said. "You're safe now." That night, we checked her into a hotel under my name. I paid cash. Rebecca stayed with her while I made calls, one to Martin, our family lawyer, and another to the district attorney's office. By morning, we had a plan. The next day, Martin arranged a meeting at the company boardroom. Daniel thought it was about finances, just business as usual. He showed up at 6 sharp, briefcase in hand, confident as ever, until he saw Lily sitting there beside me. His smile faltered. "What is this?" he said. "Why is she here?" Rebecca stood. Her voice didn't shake. "Sit down, Daniel." He hesitated, then glanced at me. "Margaret, she's a thief. You can't let her." "She didn't steal anything," I interrupted. "You did." The door opened behind him. 2 detectives stepped inside. Daniel spun around, confusion flickering into panic. "We have your financial records," one said calmly. "The offshore accounts, the property purchase, the forged evidence. You're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and witness intimidation." Daniel's face drained of color. "This is insane." Rebecca cut him off. "You destroyed my sister's life. You used me to do it. You don't get to talk anymore." The detectives cuffed him, read his rights, and led him out. The sound of his footsteps faded down the hall, and for the first time in months, the air felt clean. Time passed. Lily moved back home. Her baby, a boy she named Edward, after my husband, was born on a quiet Tuesday morning. Rebecca and I were both there, holding her hands, crying with her as she became a mother. Years later, I still work at the mill, but from my office window I often see the two of them, Rebecca and Lily, presenting side by side in the boardroom, laughter filling the space that once held so much pain. I used to believe legacy was built through bloodlines. Now I know it's built through love, forgiveness, and the courage to stay when it's easier to run. That's the story of how I lost my family and found it again. If this story touched your heart, take a second to leave a comment. Would you have forgiven someone who once turned their back on you? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories about truth, second chances, and the kind of love that never gives up. Because sometimes, family isn't the one we're born into. It's the one we fight to keep.